On a day with only 3 games, we saw a big overtime game winner, a statement victory, and another team simply taking care of business. As we are now into another episode of Locked On NHL Game Night.
When that final horn sounds, you know it's time for Locked On NHL Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. Prepare to experience game day reactions like never before, only on Locked On NHL Game Night. Your team every day.
Hey, I'm Mike Osti again. I'm a digital journalist in the Pittsburgh market, currently most notably with Yardbarker and SiriusXM. And for tonight's edition of Locked On NHL Game Night, I'm joined alongside by Eddie Garcia, who's a host of Locked On Los Angeles Kings, also a colleague of mine here at NHL Game Night, and he does a myriad of other things in media in the Los Angeles market. So, Eddie, how you doing, man? It was an easy slate on Sunday, but these games mattered to say the very least. And of course, other news and notes happened around the league, but you can check in with our colleagues over there throughout the Locked On NHL channel to hear about what went on, some trades and some other developments. But an easy 3 games and yet an impactful 3 games nonetheless.
Yeah, the NHL schedule is always interesting, the way that they decide to do things.
Yes.
You know, Shukri writes and I had 13 games yesterday, and it's almost too much to get through in 30 minutes. And then you got a day like today. You got a day like today where you can kind of relax and really get into things. So, not quite the frenzy that you see on a Saturday. Nice, relaxing Sunday, but some important games and some impressive performances as well.
Yeah, lazy Sunday, but I'm not complaining, but important games for sure. True. And we have plenty to talk about, and I'm sure we'll get through it no matter what. We both have the gift of gab. So welcome again to Locked On NHL Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 podcast network. And as I mentioned, we have an overtime game winner, a statement victory, and another team taking care of business. The overtime game winner goes to the Detroit Red Wings, who have been in this refuse to lose mantra all year. This was the season they had to get in the playoffs. They had to snap the 9-year postseason drought. The pressure was on Yzerman and company to get it done this year. The roster was better, and they've been playing like it. They've been winning a lot of games that in past years they definitely would have lost. This is another one of those. It looked like they were going to blow this game. It looked like Ottawa was going to steal this game towards the end. Detroit ends up getting the victory in overtime. And again, refusing to lose. They get their 30th win of the season. They're fighting for a division title. It looks now, going into, the end of January, that they are locked into a postseason spot. Nothing's guaranteed, but they get another big win. It just seems like they just refuse to lose and will never give up on games. What's your takeaway from this game and even this Red Wing team all year, that they've been different than they have in recent years, even though the core group is still the same?
Yeah, no, I think it's very well said. And this was the year that it seemed like a lot of people were talking about. This needed to be the year that Steve Yzerman had enough time to put his stamp, to put his roster together, to get his coach in place. And I don't know if ownership was exactly the same, as far as this had to be the year. But it seemed like the tone in the media and certainly amongst the fan base was that we need to see results this year, and that meant a playoff spot. And I agree with you. It would take a monumental collapse at this point for them not to make the playoffs. And I think it's games like we saw today against a desperate Ottawa team that showed that this is a team that is ready to snap that 9-year drought. They fall behind 2-0 on home ice. No panic, responding with the next 3 goals after that. Ottawa comes back to tie it. They go to overtime, and, one of their core members, Alex DeBrincat, gets the overtime game winner. We've seen guys like him, obviously Dylan Larkin, Lucas Raymond stepping up. And then you got, some of the younger players, some of the newer players also stepping up and filling in as well. So it's been a real nice mix, I think, for the Red Wings. And, John Gibson certainly appears like he's definitely cemented himself as the #1 goalie there now. He had a nice game, and he's now, getting the lion's share of the starts there. So I like what you said about refuse to lose. This is not, the Detroit team we've seen over the past few years where they've been inconsistent and up and down. And I mean, we'll see where it goes from here, but this is a team that may contend. I mean, they're right there for the top record in the East. Forget about making the playoffs. I don't know if I don't know if I'd pick them, because Tampa Bay, we're going to talk about them in a bit, but for them to be in the discussion at this point in the season, you got to love that if you're a Red Wings fan.
Yeah. And Eddie, I think you hit the nail on the head that while it's legit to discuss that they have to get in and they have to break this drought, because in recent years, you mentioned it would take a colossal collapse. They kind of did that a couple years ago. Like this group has shown flashes of maybe being better than the full-on rebuild era and maybe having to get in the postseason. They've blown it in the past. Last year, it looked like they never really got their footing. And last year, if you recall, was said going into the year that had to be the year. And then Yzerman also, he's a beloved hero there. You mentioned ownership. It would take an emotional meeting to fire him. That's not what they ever want to do. However, he didn't do anything at the deadline last year. He didn't do much, a couple years ago. And the fan base and media alike were starting to get on and, dare I say, criticize Steve Yzerman for probably the first time in his entire life in Detroit as a player and now an executive. And if they would do nothing again at the deadline, or they would collapse and not get in this year, it would fall at his feet, fair or not. But we are now at a point that is not just about getting in. I mean, if you win a division, if you are one of the top seeds, getting in would be a success, even if you get your doors blown off in the first round. But I think now there's going to be pressure from fans and media to say, you got to compete. If you're doing this against everybody that you're going to compete with in the postseason, in the regular season, you got to carry that on. And maybe now there'd be pressure to actually win a series depending on the matchups, because they've proven they can beat these teams. And there's no reason why you just have to break a drought and then just go home. Like, they can do it. It's a wide open conference. Many of the stars that we've experienced for decades upon decades, the Sidney Crosbys, the Alexander Ovechkins, et cetera, that have owned this conference, not only are they fighting to try to even get in the first place, they're far from owning the conference or making a run this year. It's open. And Tampa will be a problem that we'll get into here in a moment. But the pressure is going to start getting on. Detroit needs to hang on, win the conference in the regular season, do something in the postseason, and certainly get in and certainly add something. Because one more forward, more offensive of a punch, and it does now appear that Gibson's playing like he was when they brought him in. That was the idea, for him to be the guy and be better than they've had in net in recent years. And so far, that's happening. So if that keeps on happening, there's pressure, but they should get in at minimum. Eddie Garcia here joining me, Mike Osti, on Locked On NHL Game Night. And I do want to check in with both hosts from this game, both the host of the winner and the loser. So first, we will allow the victor to own the spoils here, as Detroit picked up the 4-3 win in overtime. And we will now hear from our Locked On Red Wings host.
Alex DeBrincat ends it in overtime against the Ottawa Senators as they lose back-to-back and blow back-to-back leads against Atlantic Division opponents. The Detroit Red Wings have now won back-to-back, took 4 of 4 points on the weekend, and it was another slow start for Detroit. That's been something all season long that they have got to rectify. They actually were down 2-0 at one point in the first early on, but they were able to claw back into this hockey game and then took control from the second period onward. Axel Sandin-Pellikka on the power play buried a goal. You saw Marco Kasper with a beautiful touch pass in the neutral zone to Lucas Raymond to set him up, and then James Van Riemsdyk, who has been one of the biggest stories for the Red Wings all season long, especially when it comes to depth scoring, in the net front, between the legs goal to give the Red Wings at least a temporary lead in the second period. And the Red Wings are, again, at least in points, tied atop the Atlantic Division.
That was pretty, to say the least. And now let's check in with the loser of the night. And you mentioned Ottawa is fighting and clawing to make a run of it this year, even though a surprise season for them. Let's check in with our host from Locked On Senators.
New goalie, but same result for the Ottawa Senators on the second half of back-to-back, an overtime loss against a division rival. I'm Brandon Pillar from the Locked On Senators podcast. and a 6-5 overtime loss to the Habs last night, and this time a 4-3 OT loss to the Red Wings. Both games, the Ottawa Senators had 2-goal leads at times, and they're not able to get it done. Sure, you get a point in each game, but that's not good enough for where the Ottawa Senators are in the standings. Now, James Reimer made his Ottawa Senators debut, first NHL game this season, and he played pretty good, honestly. 30 saves on 34 shots. He kept this team in it. Not his fault at all, but bad penalties, the penalty kill, not being able to stand up. And of course, of all guys to score the game winner, it's former Sen, Alex DeBrincat. We'll talk about this more in the postcast and on tomorrow's episode of the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.
Yeah, and Detroit refuses to lose. I think that's an understatement there. DeBrincat gets the game winner, 7 shots for him in the game. And Detroit got win number 30, and a team keeping pace with them, also picking up win number 30. And once again, looking like a juggernaut, maybe a new era of Tampa Bay Lightning hockey owning the conference, as that door is wide open for them here. We're going to get to them in a moment as we continue on with Locked On NHL Game Night. The NFL playoffs are here, and now we actually are into the conference championship games. The Rams, the Seahawks, the Patriots, and the Broncos there for you, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode, now in championship game weekend mode for sure. Every game during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action, because right now, every NFL playoff game, every day, FanDuel users get a Pronti Boost Pack, a Protify Boost Pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game, you'll get a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts as you can apply them bets throughout each game. And of course, again, only the 2 left before the big game, before the Super Bowl. Open your Protify Boost Pack first thing on game day and see what boosts you want to apply. The boosts let you lean in into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. And we have all of that again coming up with championship game weekend on the way. The boosts give you more juice on the bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet something new. And you want to go with your gut now. Again, still time before the big game, but championship game coming up. Every play feels bigger and better, and the boosts make you feel your bets are bigger and better as well. You make your picks, then apply your profit boosts to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs keep on rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game. And again, championship game weekend coming up. Back here with you, Mike Osti, Eddie Garcia, Locked On NHL Game Night. And as I mentioned, Detroit picked up win number 30. So did the Tampa Bay Lightning, and the Lightning did it in impressive fashion, a 4-1 victory over the Dallas Stars. The Lightning remain hot, hiccup or two in recent games, but they've been mostly hot despite dealing with some injuries. The Stars, on the other hand, they've now been riding a bit of a losing streak here, and this comes after they got off the snide with a big win, which came after a previous losing streak. So they've been a quality offensive team and a quality team most of the year, but in the last month, really, they've been less than themselves and right now are on a losing streak. Do you think this game says more about the Lightning as legit contenders again, or the Stars as maybe not nearly as good and legit as people thought a couple months ago?
I think it says something more about the Lightning. I think when it's all said and done, Dallas will have figured things out. I'm not really sure what's going on with them at the moment, especially offensively. That's 3 straight games, only scoring 1 goal, and they're healthy. They've got, Robertson, they've got Johnston, they've got Hintz, they've got Rantanen. They're all there. So I'm not really sure what to make of the slump right now. I think, though, eventually they figure it out. I will say I don't know that I'm super confident about them stringing a lot of wins together when it gets to the postseason, because you can't have these peaks and valleys when it gets to a best of 7.
No.
But I would lean more to, I think it says more about Tampa Bay. I mean, look, they got off to a bit of a slow start, but there were a lot of people very high on the Lightning going into this year, and I think they are now reaching that level. Obviously, they just had that huge 11-game winning streak. The losing streak the winning streak comes to an end, but they bounce right back and pick up a nice win on the road against a quality opponent. I think the thing that I like about Tampa Bay, and I saw them here in Los Angeles when they played the Kings, that they've got the skill, but they also will get the hardworking goals. And we saw it in this game. Brandon Hagel gets a goal going to the net and putting in a loose puck. Jake Gensel, gets a shot from down low.
I know him all too well,
yes,
for sure.
Of course, with Pittsburgh. So they can do the tic-tac-toe passing, and obviously Nikita Kucherov can do that better than anyone. But I do like that this Tampa Bay team will go and get those dirty goals when necessary. And usually you got to get those hardworking goals in the playoffs. I thought Andre Vasilevsky was really good in this one. He let in a stinker early on. It trickled through him. And then after that, he kind of shook his head and said, okay, you're not getting another one. And then they didn't. They did not get another one after that. He stopped Jason Robertson on a breakaway. He was very solid after that and just looked like a veteran guy who's like, all right, that's on me, guys. I've got the rest of the game. And he absolutely did. So Tampa Bay is looking, and, Braden Point was coming on, and unfortunately he got hurt and he's back out. But, when they're firing on all cylinders, they're as good as there is in the NHL.
Yeah. I mean, this is not exactly the same Lightning team or even core group that was a part of their dynastic run. Steven Stamkos, of course, no longer there. But when you have a legit goaltender, really a future Hall of Fame goaltender that's been there and done it before, kind of like what people thought Florida would eventually do, and maybe we'll get into them at the end here in our third segment of the show. Maybe one of the teams that we're going to play a contender or pretender game here in our third segment. And they've so far looked like a pretender despite being in the Cup final 3 straight years and back-to-back champs. But the other team in Florida here in Tampa Bay, they look like they want to grab the reins again of the conference, with it kind of again being so open this year, with maybe Florida not doing it and the other usual stars not there. And you have a veteran goaltender that's going to be confident all the way through. You have a great defensive team, but they are so normally tagged as a great defensive teams in Brenton team in past years that maybe their offense sometimes gets slighted. This year, not the case. They are hanging goals every single night of the week here. You mentioned the 4 against the Stars. Outside of that loss to the Blues, which is a rough loss, they had recent games with 5 against Philadelphia, 7 against Philadelphia, 4 against the Avalanche. You mentioned you saw them against the Kings. They put 5 on the board and then 7 against the Sharks. So they are also matching up very well and performing very well against Western Conference teams that if they would get to a Cup final, they've certainly shown they can beat anybody, but even inside their own conference, they're a team, Eddie, that I don't think anybody wants to be playing in a postseason series, regardless of where anyone's seated. And of course, they are now fighting for that top spot. Nobody wants to be facing a veteran team that's been there and done it before, that has players with rings and can do it defensively, can do it with a goaltender, and can do it offensively with ease almost.
Yeah, and frankly, that head coach too. I know I've heard a lot of chatter. I don't know if you've heard it as well. It seems like there's a push amongst the media to get John Cooper the Jack Adams this year, because I've watched a lot of national games with Tampa Bay and they always seem to bring it up. And I get it that he's never won the Jack Adams before. How is that possible? And I understand that, but it seems like it's a narrative this year that they want to try and get him that award. So we'll see if he gets it or not. I don't think he really cares about it, frankly. He has the respect of everybody in the game, but if you talk about, players that have been there and done that, you've certainly got a head coach that has been there and done that as well. And when you look at some of the guys he's competing against in the East right now, we talk about Detroit contending, Carolina, obviously, they just can't seem to get over that hump as much as Rod Brind'Amour has, respect around the league as well. But John Cooper, that guy just knows how to push the right buttons. That's why he's coaching the Canadian Olympic team. And, if you look at the best coaches in the NHL right now, he's got to be right up there at the top.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a future Hall of Famer in his own right. There's no slighting him. That's one of the things that goes on when you lead a dynasty, when you lead a great team with great players, and you're part of it too as the coach. Sometimes you're not going to vie for the Jack Adams. You're not going to vie for a coach of the year. That goes across sports. Sometimes the coach with the most rings doesn't vie for the individual awards, but usually maybe those go to teams not expected to do anything. And maybe Tampa Bay didn't really get the respect that maybe they should have entering the season. I don't know if anyone picked them to be this good, even if they were going to be better than recent years. So maybe that warrants him maybe getting consideration now. And I wouldn't be shocked. Yeah, that's hockey media. We all know it sometimes goes that way. When they feel like someone's due for something or has been slighted before, we got to check off a box on a resume. They do it. So I wouldn't be shocked if the hockey world kind of makes this happen for him. But if he gets it, I don't think anyone's going to argue too much when you look at the record they're putting forth, the way they're playing, the way they're winning, and kind of how it's been the last several years, where it's not been like it was when they were a dynasty, and maybe getting back to that with, again, the door wide open in the Eastern Conference. We have one more game left on our schedule here, and then we're maybe going to play a game and get you out of here with a lazy Sunday, but an important Sunday nonetheless here on Locked On NHL Game Night. The Edmonton Oilers take care of business, and that is an understatement. They take care of business, a 5-0 victory over the lowly St. Louis Blues, and every now and then the Blues compete, but not in this one. The Oilers kind of just dominated from the jump, and they did it without McDavid having to dominate. He didn't have to get a hat trick or anything wild in this game. They put up the goals, just all through their lineup. It didn't have to be McDavid and Draisaitl. They went down through the order and were able to get goals. Your thoughts on this game, this win for Edmonton, and even this Oilers team all year? Because obviously, when you lose in the Cup final back-to-back years, including one when you have the Conn Smythe winner, when you have arguably the best player in hockey, a future Hall of Famer in his own right in McDavid, and you have another prolific scorer who's also probably a Hall of Famer in Draisaitl, it's about winning the Cup or nothing this year. It's hard to get there 3 years in a row no matter what, and certainly owning the West again. But they've been hot and cold a little bit this year, and sometimes have dropped games where it felt like they had to get that guarantee win. Not an issue in this one at all.
No, not at all. And it was the storybook start for them. They had a long ceremony before the game for Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who played in his 1,000th career game.
Yeah.
And he comes right out and scores on the power play, the first goal of the game. Crowd goes wild. And it was just basically a party celebrating Nuge there all night for the Edmonton Oilers. But back-to-back impressive wins for them, easy wins for them, back-to-back shutout wins for them. I think they've outscored their opponents something like 11, 12-0 in the last couple of games. Yeah. And you're right, they've done it. Well, both games they did it without Leon Draisaitl, who's left the team he's gone back to Germany for a personal issue. And McDavid, wasn't vintage McDavid in these last
played,
two games.
But didn't.
Yeah, he had a couple assists in this one, and he leads the
league
with 85 points, though that's not nothing, but not the McDavid we've seen at times where he just takes over a game and makes the other
didn't
team
have
look
to.
silly.
Right.
No, didn't have to in this one. Obviously, it's interesting. Obviously, me being out in the West, being in the Pacific, and looking at Vegas and Edmonton, they're starting to separate themselves from the rest because it's a muddled pack of other teams for that third spot and for a wild card. And it's interesting, both of them having their goaltending issues. And I know Edmonton went out and got Tristan Jarry to try and solve that. Connor Ingram got a shutout in this one, so he's been nice as they picked him up off. I think it was off waivers from Utah.
And Jarry got hurt. Soon they do that trade, and then Jarry gets hurt. So they really.
And then you've got Vegas that has had goaltending issues all year. Is Aiden Hill going to get healthy? Is he going to stay healthy? They're going with Akira Schmid, who God bless him is doing the best he can. But it's interesting to see those two. Are they going to be able to get the goaltending? To really go on a deep run? Both of those teams. Will be very interesting to see, but easy win. And, look, for St. Louis, they're trying to get back in the wild card, but I mean, they had back-to-back wins over Carolina and Tampa Bay. So that was pretty good. They just didn't have any gas left, unfortunately, for them in Edmonton tonight.
No, they've shown they can compete, but, I've talked about this on past shows with Alex. In a way, it almost would be better if they kind of, put some water on themselves and just don't make it and end up as one of the worst teams. I mean, really, for the future of their franchise, because they're not really going to go anywhere this year, and they kind of need more star power if they really want to ever get back to where they were when they kind of won that, anomaly Stanley Cup years ago. Again, Eddie Garcia, Mike Osta here on Locked On NHL Game Night, and we just had those 3 games, but we're going to have another segment for you guys, some contender or pretender, some of the teams that Eddie mentioned, a lot of it jumbled out in the West, but a lot of teams in the East too are maybe interesting. So we'll see which teams we actually think are going to stay in this race, as we aren't far now from that Olympic break, which is obviously different than recent years as well, with the NHL not competing the last go round. So stay here on Locked On NHL Game Night. Thank you for making Locked On NHL Game Night your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go check out our new Everydayer Club. It has access to an ad-free audio feed of your favorite Locked On NHL show, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. An innovative opportunity for members to get locked on with their favorite team with the Locked On Everydayer Club. You can also be part of the Discord service, which includes a group chat just for listeners of the show and a conversation with the hosts of that show. Again, check out the Everydayer Club to lock in with Locked On here, and it includes us at Locked On NHL Game Night. And Eddie, so it's a wide open race in both conferences in all reality. Even the teams at the top, there's some doubt if they're going to stay there. It's more wide open than in recent years. This is kind of a weird NHL season that everybody thinks they really have a chance here. Even teams that I mentioned with the Blues, maybe the Flames or another one, it's probably best not to get in. But they're fighting, they're clawing, they're competitive at games. Calgary went on that 9-game winning month. They went 9-4, I believe was the record in December. Some fans may wince and say, I don't want to get in. I'd rather build for the future. But these teams are all hanging in there. It'll be interesting who's really going to be a buyer at the deadline. There might be a lot of buyers. There might be more buyers this year than in past years. I just want to do a quick, kind of rapid fire contender or pretender here before we get out of this one. And we'll start in the Eastern Conference where I am and you're out west. So outside of the teams we mentioned that should certainly get in, and we'll see where they end up seed-wise, we got to bring up the Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean, they have a star-studded roster, already have let go of an assistant coach, and then that clicked them into higher gear, and they started winning again. When you have Austin Matthews and company, you're supposed to do more than just get in and crawl in. It's been a long freaking time since they've even made a deep run, and of course, it's been a long drought there since '67, since they've even been in the Cup final or lifted Lloyd Stanley's Cup. Since expansion, it hasn't happened. Who knows if this is the year, or when that ever will happen. But are they a contender or a pretender for this season, not only just to get in, but to do something in the playoffs, because that's what they're going to be graded by?
Yeah, they might get in. I don't think they're a contender, though. I still think they're a pretender. William Nylander can't stay healthy. We talked about Vegas and Edmonton having goalie issues. I don't know if Stolarz and Woll have actually been together this year at all. It seems like one of them's injured or the other. I don't know that they've been together this season. And it's all falling on Austin Matthews. Is he got enough to carry this team maybe into the playoffs, but to be a contender? No, I would say no. I'd say they're a pretender.
I'm kind of with you there on that one, the Capitals. So they're still driven by Ovechkin. They've lost some games even when he does score, which is a concern for a team that maybe is looking for a new identity whenever he would retire. But there's some depth there. There's some young pieces there. You think they can do something and give one more deep run to Ovi?
No, I don't think so. I thought they played above their heads last season, and we're seeing a little bit of that this year.
Argue that for sure.
And maybe rode the wave of the Ovechkin, record chase. Where some people thought maybe it would be a distraction. I think it was actually the other way. I think they actually kind of rode it and it kind of inspired them. But they're up and down this year. They could be like Toronto. They could get into a wild card maybe, but I don't see them being a contender. I say they're a pretender.
So I'm going to bring up the Florida Panthers here. They've been in the Cup final 3 straight years. They've won it back-to-back years. They're getting healthier. The roster's there. Obviously, Bobrovsky's like Vasilevsky. He's a Hall of Fame goaltender that's been there and done it before and is very, very confident. But they're a team that's not really been in a playoff spot most of this year, and they've been hot and cold. Is this finally the end of the line for them? We almost have to include them in a segment like this just because of the last 3 years. Otherwise, I maybe wouldn't, because the record now shows that they're not a contender. But are they going to get back to that point?
I will just say this. If they can get in, if you're a division champ, you want to face that team in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, right.
I mean, what a reward, right, for winning your division.
Imagine Detroit getting in for the first time in a decade, and then that's the reward, right?
No, I do not want to face that team if they get in. They're motivated. Sure. We talked about coaching. They've got the coach. Sam Bennett will turn it on in the playoffs like he always does. Yeah. Matthew Tkachuk will be back. I I'm not ready to put dirt on the Panthers yet. So if I have to pick contender or pretender, I would still pick contender, believe it or not.
100%. I'm kind of right there with you. It's almost, you can't not. And if they get in, nobody's going to want to face them at all. No one's going to want to play them. And I could definitely see them, say, upsetting a Detroit who hasn't been there and they've been there in a first round series. I don't think they're going to go to the Cup final again. I'll say that. But I definitely don't want to, I wouldn't want to play them. And I definitely don't want to doubt them just yet. Before we get fully to the West, we're going to do a quick rapid fire with 3 more teams out West. We do have a late edition here for our Locked On Oilers host. So I want to make sure you give him some time to throw him, they took care of business. We'll see what he has to say now.
Sometimes in the NHL, you do get the storybook game. On a night Ryan Nugent-Hopkins played his 1,000th game, he opened the scoring just over 5 minutes into the game. And from there, the Oilers were off to the races, ultimately prevailing 5-0 over the St. Louis Blues in a game Edmonton dominated. Their second game over the weekend, they played a back-to-back. No Leon Draisaitl, who is over in Germany dealing with family stuff. And the Oilers largely didn't miss a beat tonight. A lot of penalties, 5 of them between both teams in the first period, but Edmonton killed off the St. Louis power plays, built a little bit of momentum, got their feet under them, and this was as academic an effort as you're going to get. A pair from Zach Hyman, Nuge, who I mentioned, opened the scoring, and for the second straight day, this was not the Connor McDavid carry the team show. This was supporting cast members. Connor Ingram, shutout, first shutout since January of last year, if I remember correctly, and we are talking about a team that's won 11-0 over the last 2 days, and with a handful of games to go until the Olympic break at the end of the month, the Oilers maybe are starting to make some progress on what their playoff lineup is ultimately going to look like.
Hit the nail on the head. We couldn't have said it better ourselves, and we did. So that works very, very well for us. So rounding out the program here, West Coast style, Seattle Kraken. Are they contender or pretender for you?
They've done a lot better than I thought they would, but they're so offensively challenged. Yeah. They've gotten good goaltending. They're pretty sound defensively as a team, but I'm going to have to say pretender on that one.
I'm with you there. San Jose Sharks, another team that young Celebrini is carrying them at times. They have big overtime victories, including over your Kings. Contender or pretender? This feels like earlier than they would have thought in terms of their plan, but maybe they actually could contend this year.
Yeah, certainly exciting. Certainly the exuberance of youth there. Celebrini is phenomenal. The goaltending is not bad. They just got Will Smith back from injury, so Celebrini will get a little bit of help there with his buddy. But he is really, I mean, if you look at the numbers, he's so far ahead of anyone else on that team when you're thinking about an MVP, right? It's a guy who has the numbers and is the most important player on his team. He's both. And look, McDavid and McKinnon are phenomenal players, but I think both their teams would still be pretty good if they weren't on the team. I don't know that you could say that about San Jose. So
that's fair.
As long as Celebrini can keep doing his thing, I would put them more in the contender category.
It's really hard to doubt him with Celebrini and what he's putting together. I mean, he's already well ahead of his total points from his season a year ago, and they are also set up probably solid for the future when you look at building around him and having some with youth around him and maybe ahead of schedule. So kind of the opposite of the Blues. The Blues maybe thought they could do it, and they're farther away, but yet San Jose maybe is further ahead of schedule. Thanks again to Celebrini, to say the least. Anaheim Ducks will be the last team here for contender or pretender. Give you all your rivals. Yeah. They're another team that the record legitimizes them in this conversation, but it feels like the hockey world wanted to doubt them going into this season.
Yeah, I just, they're last in the NHL in goals allowed. I mean, right. And I think that, you can't outscore all your problems. And they were doing that earlier in the year. Sure. There's a lot of young talent there. There's a lot of things to be excited about for sure. The future looks bright.
Yeah.
And they've got that coach, right? That has been there and done that. But I just think the defense right now, and we'll see what they do, if they do anything here at the trade deadline to help out. But for now, I just think when you have allowed the most goals in the NHL, I can't consider you a contender.
Yeah, and it's weird what their record says, but yes, I don't think they're really going anywhere. And out of the 3 teams from the West, they are probably the least legit to make a run. San Jose probably being, the team that maybe would have the most chance for this game. But yeah, I don't buy Anaheim either. That'll do it for this edition of Locked On NHL Game Night. Eddie Garcia, host of Locked On LA Kings, hoping that his Kings can join those rivalry teams and build for the future and get back moving as they get a new era of themselves without Kopitar. Mike Osti here again, digital journalist in the Pittsburgh market. That'll do it for this edition of the show. Stay tuned here, of course, with Locked On NHL Game Night every night throughout the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network.